While most MSPs are out there hunting endlessly for new clients, the smart ones know their richest opportunities lie in the fields they already own. My name's James Steele and this is Harvest, where MSPs and industry experts share proven ways to grow profitable revenue from your current customer base. No theory, no fluff, just field-tested strategies that work. Let's grow.
Don't go into a TBR, QBR, whatever we're calling them. Don't go into that with an agenda of 6 products to push and sell, because I don't think you'll succeed. If we think we've got a good chance of getting this in 30+% of our partners, then certainly we'll put the go-to-market framework into play. One thing that we'll say is, look, we're not even gonna consider project work, pro services, big changes to infrastructure until we are 6 months down the road. If it's got a plug on the end of it, it ends up being our problem at some point.
Good day to you. Welcome along to this episode of Harvest. Now, I have to say, I'm having an absolute blast recording these. I hope it comes across. If you've got any feedback, let me know. You can always hit me up on LinkedIn. Also, if you've got any questions you want to put to the guest, just send them over. Send me a voice note. You can do that on LinkedIn on your phone. Send it across and I'll work it into the show somehow. So I'd love to hear from you. As you know, this show is all about practical, real-world sales tactics that you can actually do something with. That's the plan. So today is no different. I'm joined by Mike Parfitt from Team MetaLogic, an MSP here, actually over in Wales, so part of the United Kingdom. And he's been running his MSP since 2003. But what really stood out over the course of this conversation is how his success, I think, is a lot down to how intentional and process-driven his whole approach is. From onboarding to upselling, we dig into how to move from an order taker to the trusted advisor, what makes an A-class client, and the difference it makes when your sales, service and marketing teams actually talk to each other. I think you're going to get a lot from this one. As always, I really enjoyed it. Make sure you've got a notepad ready. There's going to be lots of tactical stuff in this. Let's get started. Welcome to Harvest, Mike Parfitt from Team MetaLogic. Fantastic to have you on. Mike, we had a great chat prior to this podcast where you just completely revealed so many of the different elements of your business that were perfectly aligned with this podcast in terms of getting the most out of your existing customer base. So really excited to talk to you today. But first of all, hello, how are you doing? You good?
Yeah, hi James, I'm really good, thank you. Yeah, and I did think that was a private conversation maybe, but here we are. We'll tell everybody all the secrets now, shall we?
That's it, always. So I recorded it all and I've got my notes and now I'm going to extract the most out of you for the next 30 minutes. So listen, brilliant to have you on. So you started off, we've been in business for a long time, so since 2003, grown the business to sort of around about just over a dozen staff now, is that correct?
16 currently, yeah.
16, right? Okay, so 16, and you've gone through a bit of a kind of a transformation, I think, during that time, and it's really there that I'd like to focus because I think so many of the people listening will be thinking to themselves, right? Okay, I'm at this point where I think I don't feel like I've fully utilised what is in my customer base, and perhaps some of the new lead generation tactics aren't working for me. So I think a nice place to start is you mentioned something about kind of cleaning house in terms of getting your shop in order and maybe looking at those clients that were a good fit. So let's have a little chat about what's a good fit client and how do you start positioning yourself more towards those?
Sure, and I think when you start that conversation, the first thoughts kind of got to be what are the attributes that you don't want to concern yourselves about? And for us, I mean, and it's probably one of those things that you'd expect them to be, but the size of the business, the amount of revenue they turn over, the amount of profit they have, the number of staff they have, those are not the attributes that we care about at all. Because we can take a really small business, and if we're successful, they become successful, and the intention is kind of going to be that they grow. And then we'll experience that mutual growth and success as a result of it. So those sort of metrics, those revenue-based, profit-based size of business, we don't really care about those. What we do care about are the attributes that would make them a strategic or a growth business. So, for example, do they have an operational dependence on IT, first of all, or on technology generally? I mean, if they don't, then there's not a lot of space for us to help them grow through the effective use of technology.
So you're looking at businesses. So an example of one that wouldn't have really an operational reliance. Then is that someone that'd be more in the give me an example of that, because even manufacturing companies would have quite heavy reliance, wouldn't
When
they?
we work with manufacturing companies, but it's because they're applying technology well to their business. If it was an old school traditional manufacturing where people are coming into the building and they clock in on a punch card every day, and then they go and use machinery. There's not a lot we can do. There might be 3 people in an office that are using Sage Accounts or something like that, just to keep the books in order, and that's about it. But if that manufacturing business wanted to use technology solutions for clocking in staff, for looking at where staff were in a business, if they had lone workers and those sorts of issues were a problem for them, and we want to put technology solutions in place for those, that's where there's a great fit, because that
it's almost like being willing to go down the technology route, really, willing to embrace how a better way of working is what you're looking for.
And you can extend that willingness. I think one of the attributes extends out to they're receptive to professional advice. What we don't want to be is just an order taker. We want to be seen as a trusted advisor to that business. And we often are. With many of the partners that we work with, we'll sit in their board meetings, and we'll sit in from their IT directorate sort of level. And we might not attend the whole board meeting, but we'll get a slot. We'll either turn up or we'll dial into it. And we'll present all things technology to them. We'll talk about their budgets, and where we have those great relationships with what we call these A-class partners is where trust is really in the room. And when we've really got that trust, we can sit down with them and just have an honest conversation where they say, do you know what? Our budget for IT this year is X. Our budget for cybersecurity is Y, and our budget for miscellaneous technology is Z. Go and spend it. And it's not about us just spending that on the things that are going to make us the most profit, or because they're shiny and new, and we're all magpies in this industry and we love to jump on that stuff. It's about making the best use of that spend for that business. And cybersecurity, classic example of that. But we always want to talk about defense in depth and multiple layers of approach, and that budget might be smaller than it needs to be, but let's take that budget and use it as effectively as we can for that business so they get the best results from it, and hopefully the best return on investment.
That's really good.
Kind of extends out then. They'll get a return on investment from working with us.
Did that take you off guard slightly? I can absolutely relate to this. Those early client conversations, particularly, where you're trying to work out if you're genuinely a good fit, it can be really tempting just to take on anyone because, it's a customer, a client, and they'll sign. But that rarely pays off. So this approach, although it's a little bit different to what you might expect, is really important, I think. So looking at that operational alignment over size or budget. And the one thing I've seen work well here is to bake this kind of fit test into your very first call. So here's a bit of advice you can take away. Why not take a look at your next 3 prospect calls and ask, are you actually qualifying for alignment, or are you just focusing on that sort of more the affordability angle instead? And so from what I've heard from you, that certainly hasn't always been the case, that you've been in this trusted advisor role. And we hear this trusted advisor term a lot. For an MSP that's sort of struggling to really get into that role or make that shift in mindset, can you just paint the picture of perhaps what it was like before you embraced that, and then the sort of the key changes that you made and how it looks now, or how it looks different now you are in the role that you want to be, you're playing that role?
Yeah, I think it's just a shift in direction of conversation. I mentioned about being an order taker, and we were in that position. It was, we would sit here and wait to be asked or told to do something. And that's fine. That works for a lot of MSPs, and they might, that might work well for a certain customer if that's the certain type of customer that you work with. But I don't think it's a growth factor. And what you want is to be, what we want to be is technical innovators. We want to be bringing new ideas to the table for that business because we understand the business. We understand their own goals and objectives from a business point of view, not a technology perspective, but from a business point of view. And we understand all the tech that's out there. And we can just sort of bring these things together.
And how do you find it? You mentioned about sort of going into customers and them sort of saying, right, we've got X amount of budget to spend, and you do your best with it. How do you get to the point where they trust you with that amount of budget? Because I think a lot of MSPs will be thinking, well, I go in there and I try and get the bare essentials in, and they're penny pinching on that. How did you get to that point? Is there a shift there in the conversation about the finance side of things, do you think?
I think it's just about proving, you got to prove yourselves, definitely. And it doesn't start early. I mean, Look, well, I'll rephrase that. It starts from the very first moments you propose your costs or your plans, your agreements to that customer. But they've got to believe it, and they've got to see value in what you're doing for them. So for us, where that trust really starts is during an onboarding process. So we'll get a lead or we'll speak to a prospect, and the first thing we'll do is have a right fit call with them. And we're quite honest in that call, and we'll just say, look, the purpose of this call, I want to understand about you and your business, and I want to understand about what's got you to speak to us, etc. But the objective of this call is hopefully for you to see that we're a good fit for you as an IT partner, but also for us to determine the same of you. We've got to be a good fit for each other.
Do you turn some away? Do you find in those conversations occasionally you need to?
But you can be the one thing you are at the end of that conversation, if you take that difficult decision to say no to a prospect, is you get trusted. And so if we get to the end of that call and I say, look, we're not the cheapest, but we are an IT partner that will hopefully get you a return on investment. But for that, you need to be in a position where you are either growing or you've got a plan to achieve something in a certain direction. And all you need is somebody to take away a headache of fixing printers every week. You're not going to get value out of working with us. It's just going to be an expense that you'll end up regretting. And we want to have a strong relationship. So I can give you a list of names of other MSPs or other IT companies that will be just that for you. But we're not going to get off to a good start based on this call. And I don't want to upset you, and I don't want your expectation to be different than it should. I mean, even when you're saying no in that respect, you're kind of getting trusted because you're being seen as somebody that's not just after the cash, and you're being quite honest.
You're very much leaving the door open still, aren't you? I mean, it's quite possible that, the later growth stage, given that you're honest with them and they liked your approach.
What I will say is that does feed egos on occasions, and all of a sudden you get a peacock chest goes out and it goes, we are a growth business. We are going to work with you. You send me a proposal. So yeah, a bit reverse psychology, maybe not intentionally, but yeah, that certainly does happen. And then, if we are successful with that business, if we do see ourselves as being a right fit, if they do have loads of A-class attributes, then hopefully we win that business and we onboard them. And that onboarding process for us is kind of like 3 months long. It's a 90-day project that we put in place. 3 phases of that project over each 30-day period, a bit of discovery and eyes on, a bit more deep dive, and then the 3rd month we go into that strategic piece. And the one thing that we'll say is, look, we are not even going to consider project work, pro services, big changes to infrastructure until we are 6 months down the road, because we want those conversations to be trusted conversations.
I really like that.
If we go straight in and say, oh, we've onboarded you and we've found all these problems, you've got Windows 10 workstations and they're under spec, and you've got an out-of-date firewall that's end of life, and your antivirus is rubbish. If we start to do all that stuff straight away, it's just cost. And that's not...
It's almost the Backstreet Garage approach, isn't it? You went in to get a puncher fixed and suddenly you need a full chassis realignment and goodness knows what else. This is great because getting sign-off for the big projects isn't about getting the flashy decks and just offering everything straight away and showing them what you can do. Really, it comes down to have you got that the dull stuff in place, the clarity, consistency, the follow through, is that there? And I think Mike's idea here of keeping the 90-day onboarding process structured so that you're delaying any project work until you've really got that trust established is very smart. And I've seen this work well with other MSPs too. And I think setting the expectations early around when any of the sort of strategic projects will start is going to pay off. So a piece of advice, just have a look at your onboarding process and just think, okay, can we stagger this slightly? Is there one clear step that positions the sort of the strategic input as something that's earned, not assumed? Are you taking care of the initial requirements, the pains first? Can I ask you, when you first do these engagements, then are you finding that you'll tend to go in and do they have a pain point at that time, and you go in and you kind of obviously you fix their immediate requirement, but is there a kind of baseline? Where I'm getting to with this is that I think a lot of MSPs will basically be providing a service, and it's kind of they need to land but then expand. So I'd like to know what's it like when customers come to you typically, and then how do we get to providing them a full breadth of services from our portfolios?
Invariably, it's businesses that are working with an IT company or provider that doesn't care enough or that they don't feel capable to keep up with their own growth plans.
Okay.
And it's about leading from the front. It's that same story, but you want to flip those conversations. So we are bringing the ideas to the table to them, not them coming to us and saying, oh, we want AI, or we want a Teams room, or we want to do this. We've got to be coming in and saying, oh, look, you do this, but you could do it better, smarter, more efficiently, more sustainably, whatever the outcome is. But have you thought about this technology? Let me show you how it works. Let's introduce you to it. And so flipping those conversations again, definitely that's how you get in. And usually, lack of confidence in their provider to keep up with their own growth. I mean, that's a great one for us because it means they're A-class. They've got a growth plan, they've got a strategy, and they want the technology to align with that. Mm-hmm. Response times, resolution times, an underskilled team. Most people now, we're in a digitally native workforce. Most people can Google the answer to their problems themselves. What they don't need is to be phoning their IT partner and getting somebody on the phone that's just bagging and tagging that issue and adding further delays, because they've probably Googled the answer themselves and realized they can't do it. So now they want somebody skilled on that job. So I think underskilled techs, bad response times, bad resolution times, lack of confidence in that partner. And I think what businesses look for when they come to us is somebody that can help beyond just the I've lost my bold button, my printer's not working, etc. They want more now.
So Simon, you offer, it's a full range of IT services there. How do you go about do you have a particular approach to the sort of the productization, the sort of packaging? So when you're looking at a particular client and you're trying to scale this motion of, okay, I've got, I know we've got all this tech we'd like to offer, but I'd like to take it to the clients in a way that's right for their needs. How are you aligning your portfolio with what you're seeing, and how regularly do you do that? How does that process look for you guys?
By not talking, by listening instead. And that's the key to it. I mean, what works for us really well, James, is conversational selling, I suppose. It's don't go into a partner meeting, don't go into a TBR, QBR, whatever we're calling them. Don't go into that with an agenda of 6 products to push and sell, because I don't think you'll succeed. It's again, and that's not selling from trusted advisor position. But you go into that meeting with little agenda other than 5 minutes of this is how we've performed over the last month, quarter, whatever it is. This is what your team have said about us, feedback. Let's just get that out the way right at the start, because that's not, they can read a report, log into a portal to see that stuff. And then just sit down and say, right, how's business? Talk to me. And all our guys do when they're doing those conversations is listen. And what have you achieved this quarter? What are you looking to achieve in the 6-12 months ahead? What challenges have you got in the business right now? Are they recruitment challenges? Are they people challenges? Are they HR challenges? Are they health and safety challenges? And what matters then is that we've got a really broad knowledge and understanding and product stack that can potentially fill a lot of those gaps. Not always. Sometimes we've got to, go to market ourselves and find something that works, and we learn it quickly, and then we can certainly sit and advise on that product. But it's about just listening and having those conversations. And at one point they might say, for example, we're going through a bit of a nightmare at the moment because we've got to sort out all of our buildings compliance, and I need certificates for this and certificates for that, and I'm chasing plumbers and water treatment people. And we say, look, why aren't you digitizing this? Why haven't you got a technology-based solution for all of your buildings compliance and your health and safety? Here's one. Let's sit down and have a look at it. And actually, it's going to cost you peanuts, and you're going to save all this time. And you can take this person that's got all these headaches from doing this, granted only once a year, but you can take a week's worth of work and put it into an hour.
I absolutely love this one. If you're a regular listener of the podcast, I'm not going to apologize. You'll hear this advice quite a lot, and there's a reason for it. And Mike's a classic example of why it works so well. If you've been in a QBR and there's someone having a slide deck read to them, and you can tell the client has somewhere better to be, then you're doing it all wrong. And what Mike's doing very well is conversational selling and listening. The gold is in what your client is saying when the sales pitch is kind of out of the way. So my advice to you, just if you've got a deck or you've got that itinerary or whatever it is, the agenda set, get rid of that. Ask 3 questions, something like that. Sit back, listen, and just write down everything that's going on in their business. Not tech, but any issues, any roadmap items for their company you can help with. This episode is sponsored by Sales Builder. where I work. I really wanted to tell you about us because I see so many MSP sales teams buried in admin instead of talking to customers and building relationships. We help you automate your sales process with standardized product catalogs and professional proposals. Our service matrix, or the white space module, that's the bit that shows you visually where the opportunities are in your customer base, from service gaps to upcoming renewals. Everything links directly with your PSA and, of course, your distributors. If you'd like to free up your sales team's time and spot more revenue opportunities, simply connect with me on LinkedIn or head to salesbuilder.com. Let's get back to it. You know, that standardization side of things, like how important is standardization on your end? Because it sounds like anything could be coming in terms of requirements. Do you try and align it to a sort of a set?
You certainly do, because obviously you've got a team of engineers that are then expected to support that. And so the more you standardize that, the easier it is to support it, definitely. But that's where it's on me. That's where my job is to be strategic enough to identify a lot of these things. And again, it's on me, I suppose, to listen. So I listen to the team here when they have these TBRs with partners, and we identify that, you know, if you're working with 30, 50, 100 different businesses across a range of sectors, then we've got a really privileged position where we kind of get a good indicator, a litmus test almost, of what industries struggling with at the moment. And so we can kind of put things in place by trying to think ahead of that. And again, I go back to, we've got to be technical innovators. It's, you know, we start to see problems and we start to see where there are solutions to these problems and we bring them in. And look, yes, we're commercial about it. When we bring in a new product and we go to market with that product, one of the things that we discuss at the early stages is, where can we fit this? Like, how many of our existing partners would take a product like this? If it's 5% of them, maybe it's a bit of a niche product. If we could see
that process, is that a chat by the water cooler, or is that a kind of is that actually a formalized process?
It used to be. It used to be. What it was the thing, back of a fag packet, wasn't it? That's how
I think it was. So yeah, go for it, John.
No, so we did it last year, I think, really. But we put together a go-to-market framework, and the honest answer is that I used to do it all. And I'd speak to a vendor, we'd sort out the commercials, and I think, we could sell this. And the first time most of the engineers, the service delivery team here knew about it was when we put the first one in somewhere. And that's not great. You know, that's a bit back foot stuff, isn't it? You know, and so what we've done, look, we brought marketing in-house last year. We've got a sales team. We've got the service delivery teams now. What really mattered was that all of these different areas of the business were working together and we had joined up thinking on what we wanted to achieve. So, a go-to-market framework that brings all of those different areas of the business together. We might identify a product might come to us and be delivered on the table and we look at it. And if we decide it's something that we want to look at, then we put the go-to-market framework comes into play, and we start off by working out the commercials, all the rest of it, getting those relationships in place with the vendor, how we'll sell it, on what terms.
And then decide if it's worth going for. Like, do you do any kind of sort of customer research or anything, or is it just a sort of gut feel? Or I'm just interested in this because there's an eternal issue with MSP getting products on that they're not using or they don't fit properly with the customers. You know, wasting time there. So it'd be great to get your take on that. How do you avoid wasting time?
Somewhere. And so there's things that we do, like manage security stacks, manage compliance, manage continuity. The first conversation we'll have is, does it slot into any of these? If so, is it commercially viable for us to slot it in there as a value add for all of those partners, or do we put it in as a paid extra, et cetera, et cetera? So we kind of have that conversation first, but also, as I touched on, is this something that we could currently see in 5% of our partner base or 50%? If it's only 5%, it's a bit of a niche product. We might just sit on it until there's a requirement. But if we think we've got a good chance of getting this in 30+% of our partners, then certainly we'll put the go-to-market framework into play.
That's great. You've got a benchmark there that you're aiming for.
Yeah, and it's not set in stone, but it's got to be commercially viable to us, because we're going to put a lot of effort into this as part of that framework, in doing sales training, doing technical team training, getting the vendor in usually just to introduce them to the team so we get buy-in. Again, it's about fit for us. So, we go back to that sort of wider purpose piece, but we've got to feel that there's a good fit with that vendor and ourselves. And so if we don't feel that we're going to work well together and it's going to be very transactional, it won't go very far.
Now, having worked in various capacities in the industry, this one's kind of close to my heart. I have worked in vendor land and I'm still technically there now. So this one really had me nodding. I see so many MSPs, it's particularly at shows and things, just bolting on new services, the shiny stuff, the tools, and using a fraction of their capabilities as a result. Mike's actually got a system here. I think that's brilliant. He's got a benchmark. It has to fit 30% of clients. And it's such a practical filter that you do need. It's not about whether it's a cool piece of tech, it's whether it actually fits your engine you've created. So my advice to you, before you take on your next vendor or solution, just do that kind of back of the napkin check. Can you clearly see where this lands in your top 10 clients? If you can't, yeah, it's probably not a good fit for your business.
So we have those sorts of conversations. We then start to take all the marketing materials that vendor might have and we tweak them, we adapt them, we turn them all into our own brand. We turn them into stuff that is in a language that our partners will understand. And by that, I mean, we're aligning features, benefits, whizzes and bangs to this is what it's going to do for your business. It's going to make...
When do you use those, Mike? When do you use those out of interest? Because, I mean, a lot of people take the view that actually, I go into my strategic review and I just talk about whatever service it is. I don't really need to have that stuff. But you obviously make good use of collateral and things. Do you use it just at the point after you've had a conversation, just to kind of make sure they've got the additional details? Or
two ways. Number one, it's a leave behind after the conversation. So we'd never go in and just hand it over. But that conversational selling I talked about, it's when I get back, I'll bounce you some information over. You can have a look at it. And then we can talk some more about it if it's of interest to you. So that's the one. And then also it comes in really handy. Like we do a lot of sort of now automation in terms of email nurture programs, things like that. So having those materials that, if we start to get bites, we've got something to deliver to people via email, etc., or via a gateway landing page, things like that, then that works for us as well.
Do you do the nurture to existing customers as well?
Yes, depending on like interest and stuff like that. But we're quite specific about where we'll put customers in terms of those campaigns. But certainly if we know, for example, managed security, managed compliance, those sorts of areas, if we know that customer has got a need for this and we really see it as a fit, look, I mean, sometimes we kind of see the need before they do. And they've got to feel pain and headache before then they start to put a solution in place. But we'll know that there's a fit. And so putting those customers, those partners on a nurture program, certainly it's going to drip feed them the information so that then, again, they're coming to you for the conversation, not the other way around.
I love this. From what I'm hearing, your marketing engine is sophisticated, isn't it? It's got to the point where it's certainly more sophisticated than many. So I think it's something to...
I've got no benchmark really with anybody else. You just do what you do and you hope to see results. But bringing it in-house has really helped us, actually. We've used agencies for years and it didn't work for us. But the reason being, I think, is that it's about fit again. And unless you're in the building, unless you're experiencing the culture and how we're trying to do things, our wider purpose, our why, all that sort of stuff, then it's very difficult to squeeze an effective marketing campaign into 5 hours of outsourced work a month.
Yes.
So that's helped us, certainly. And the results that we see as a result of it, that top of funnel stuff certainly is much more amplified as a result of doing that activity ourselves.
I'm really interested. You've got so much going on in here in the business and so much of it is well structured. I have to ask you just quickly, what do you measure? What's important to measure and what should you just not bother with in terms of your kind of KPIs? I mean, I guess maybe look at it in terms of people in the business. I know you've got inside sales, haven't you, and new business, and where do you look for? What do you talk about with your team in terms of where they should be hitting numbers?
What I will say is I think we're guilty of measuring things for the sake of measuring them in some areas.
Not me.
Yeah.
And reports.
Yeah, it's when we sit down in a leadership meeting once a month and we've got a KPI dashboard and there's probably about 30 KPIs in there. They will be split down via business function, et cetera, and department. And, some of those are about sick days lost and our staff turnover. Like I said, they're just things that we just want to keep an eye on and keep track of. But
yeah,
certainly
from stuff.
Yeah, from a sales perspective, look, we've got a KPI on what our pipeline is currently. We've got a KPI on the number of prospects in that pipeline, and then obviously the average value per sale, per opportunity. So we track those things.
Anything expansion related at all? Anything? Do you sort of look at like sort of the average spend per customer or anything like that, or is there anything along those lines?
Yeah. So KPIs for number of invoices raised, number of partners invoiced, average value of invoice. Those are all key KPIs that we look at, and then we target how we can get these increased. And I know you've done these podcasts for people that have talked about, forget the net new, work on your existing customers, and it is absolutely true. That's exactly what works and has worked for us, and it worked incredibly well for us during difficult times like pandemics and recessions. And 22 years in, we've been through a few now. Your existing customer base, how you add value to that base, how you get value added sales onto them. Certainly, that's got to be a key metric in your business, because they're easy sales. If you've got the conversational selling right, you're selling without selling. Actually, you're just solving pain problems for these partners that you work with, and importantly, you're just selling them something that they would buy from somewhere else if you weren't selling it. So the more things, you've covered it recently, but making sure, if you're an MSP, sell broadband, sell the internet. That's key to it. But it's everything else around it. We often joke that if it's got a plug on the end of it, it ends up being our problem at some point. So, yes, laptops, desktops, servers, routers, firewalls, access points, printers, we work with all of those things. But also we work with building management systems and air handling units and silly things like this, because they've got a plug on them and maybe a touch screen, or they need controlling, or God forbid they connect to your Wi-Fi. And again, having those conversations with our partners about, look, you just make sure you speak to us about all this stuff. If you're changing this equipment, just have a conversation with us, and we might say, nothing to do with us, don't worry, you crack on, you get that kit in. But we might say, oh, bear in mind, you need to think about this if you're doing that, or this could be an issue, etc. And so, existing customers are key to that success.
So I think that's brilliant. And I think you could easily, couldn't you, get the next shiny thing, walk into your customer and say, look, check it, I've got this incredible security solution, you absolutely have to take it, here's all the details about it, right, great, I'll get you signed up and walk out. Whereas what you're doing is actually saying, no, that's just something but in the back of my mind that I'll keep there if I need it, but I'm just going to listen to what you're doing. I think that's I think that's a fantastic point to end the main chat on. Listen, can I ask you now, we have a special segment in our podcast which is called Industry Manure. And this is where you get to dispel one of the myths that you hear bandied around in the industry. Perhaps it's some advice that you hear that you just think, that doesn't work for me and never has done. I'd love to know, what is it that you've heard that you just don't gel with? Maybe controversially, but the one for me is AI for the sake of AI. Look, it's got a wonderful place. It's going to achieve great things, but so many times we just got to say, oh, we need AI. Let's talk about AI. And what do you want to solve? And I was at a conference where the speaker on stage said a brilliant quote that stuck with me since, and I might rephrase it slightly to make it more PG, but it was AI is like losing your virginity. Everybody thinks they should be doing it. Everybody wants to be doing it. Nobody really knows how to do it, but because everyone else is doing it, they're doing it too. And it's kind of like that, And look, AI in a business to augment an existing role, to make people or process or systems do more with less. Brilliant. Let's get the AI in place. But yeah, just our competitors using AI, we got to use AI too. Or I want this AI because it's, again, shiny and new. Let's have a conversation about what you're trying to achieve as a business first, and then let's see if there is a solution that fits that. And if that solution is AI, great. If that solution is just a piece of SaaS software that's going to fix a problem for the person that's doing it, also great. You need to know what you're doing with it. There's absolutely a place for it. You do need to be on top of it, no doubt about it, but using it in the right way and making sure it's aligned with your customers for sure. Our next segment, Mike, is all about, there's going to be a question basically. So this is our Pass the Pitchfork segment.
Wait, what?
And this is where we get a question from our previous guest. In this case, it was Joe Rojas from Start, Grow, Manage. And he is interested to know from you, how do you remove yourself from the sales process as an IT owner? So many MSP owners slip into that role of being the main sort of income, as it were, for new business, for account expansion. How do you get to the point where you're no longer the only one doing that and you can successfully transition to a team, for example?
I think I still am involved. If they're managed services accounts and they're high value, or we're trying to build that strategic relationship, certainly I'll still be involved at some point in that process. But I think the key is, it's the same thing that applies to many of the things that we've tried to achieve in the business, and that's stop them being people driven and make them process driven or systems driven. And as we've grown, and 20 something years ago, it was all me. I did everything, and it was a laptop and a phone and a car, and that was kind of the business. So the more you try and put that on other people to do it your way, to do it in your vision, so to speak, the only way you can do that is if it's not you actually doing it. And the best way to get that across is to either make it process driven or make it systems driven. So, for example, if we're quoting and we've got proposals, we've got a system that will deliver those proposals, no matter whether it's person A, B, C, or me doing those proposals. There is templated documents in there. It will all be on brand. There's no way it can go out of sync with what we're trying to achieve as a business. The messaging is all correct. Get that out there. And then when that sale converts, let's make all that process driven. Let's make it all systems driven. So we're a huge fan of standard operating procedures here. We have them across the business. So there are set ways of doing all these things. So when we convert an order and we make purchase orders and we've got to put that in, then we've got a project template that is going to be the onboarding of that product for the customer, etc. It's all standardized so that I don't need to do it. I think that's the key to it. Process drive it, system drive it, get it out of somebody's head, certainly.
And what you've done crucially there is you've freed up space for them to be a little bit creative within the role and how they approach it, because they're not dealing with the busy work.
What are we if we're not drinking our own champagne? We're telling customers to align tech to your business to achieve things more efficiently, smarter, etc. Well, we've got to do the same thing, haven't we?
I think your approach, what you're doing, genuinely, I think the way that you're set up in a structured way and you have these processes, I think a lot of it does come down to process, doesn't it? I think that's the big differentiator. You've got a process for everything, and you can see anytime you introduce something standardized.
Yeah, I think it makes it easier to scale it. If you've got somebody taught me a lesson years and years ago, and when I started the business, this person still is a bit of a mentor to me, but they've held chairmanships and chief executives across enormous businesses internationally that I could list them all and you'd know every one of them. And they said to me, look, when you start a business, even if it's just you and one person, at the point that you think you might employ somebody, then build that business up as if you employ 100. And so you employ your first person, get a handbook in place for that person. Make sure they've got a good contract. So it's about put the things in place for your business early on, because as you grow, if you're successful in that growth and as you scale, then it's going to make it easy. And it did, because employing this, you put all the work in for the first person, you employ the second or the 15th, it's an easy process. And the same then goes with the tech and all the rest of it. And that kind of filters, I think, into how we work with our partners, but yeah, it's about doing it early, I think.
Yeah, I really like that. The other thing is you're just doing it again and again. I mean, obviously it does scale, but if you're having to reinvent the wheel, it's just not efficient every time, is it?
I have the conversation here so many times with the team, and it's about, you've got a new product that you're putting out there or whatever, and I'm like, right, dry run this first and document everything, screen record, get your SOPs in place, get the project template built up. I know, I'll just do the first one. And then I said, no, because you won't. You'll do the first one, and then you'll come to the second one, and it'll want to be a quick win. And before you know it, you've deployed this 10 times differently. So right at the start, you take the time, allow yourself double the time to deploy it, because then number 2 onwards will take half the time. And I think it works. It does. And all of a sudden, then if they've done their job well, then when the second one needs to be deployed, they could literally just do that and say to somebody else on the team, can you do me a favor and put this in for me, and just follow the instructions. So,
listen, Mike, have you got a question for our next guest?
Yeah. So I've been doing this for 20 something years now, and we've seen loads of of evolution of the MSP. I mean, I often say that we were an MSP before that term was invented. And I think we're on the cusp of big change. I think, a digitally native workforce, people can Google the answer to questions now. The traditional MSP, certainly, look, break fix has been long gone. We've evolved from that. We're now in this sort of more proactive, more strategic space. My question, I guess, is what's next for the MSP? What does the MSP need to focus on now as an early adopter, as an innovator, to be ahead of the competition when things need to change again?
That's a great question. Can you give us a yell from the barn now, please? So let us know where we can reach you if you've got any questions, and also tell us a little about what you're up to and what you're kind of focused on at the moment over at MetaLogic.
Sure. So anything about us you'll find on our website, teammetalogic.com. You'll find me on LinkedIn. If you want to connect, by all means, please do. Drop me a message to say hi. What we're working on at the moment, we're actually going through quite an aggressive go-to-market with about 7-8 new products vendors, just because it's our new financial year from July, and we want to get all these things lined up, ready as we go into next year. That on itself brings a lot of strategy work for me in terms of planning out the next year and what that growth is going to look like and what we have to invest into the business to be able to achieve it. But yeah, lots of conversations around compliance that we're having with partners at the moment, governance, risk, those areas are hot topics, and certainly ones that, again, our partners, the businesses that we're working with, are bringing those conversations to us.
That's brilliant. Mike, thank you so much for being a guest. Honestly, it's been great chatting to you. We've got loads of tactical stuff, which is what we love here on this podcast. Tactical stuff we can put in our business the very next day if we'd like to, and we've got plenty of that from you. So thank you so much for rocking up and for rocking the production value. If you're watching this on the on video, which you need to flick over to YouTube if not, or Spotify, we've got a video version as well. Mike's definitely rocking the production. I think he takes the award for the best backdrop and production quality there. And I'm feeling, like I need to maybe up my game. But thank you, Mike, for being a brilliant guest, and we'll hopefully chat to you very soon.
Will do. Take care now. Bye.
Very, very cool. It is such a privilege to do these podcasts. The amount of gold that comes from these conversations, I absolutely love it. Anyway, listen, that was Mike Parfitt from Team MetaLogic. I hope you enjoyed it too. Let me know, please. Message me on LinkedIn. Make sure you're on our email list. Listen, what struck me about Mike is he's doing the basics really, really well. A lot of his success, I think, comes down to the discipline around processes and knowing who he's actually trying to serve. There's no fluff here. It's just clean systems, really good, honest client conversations, and a business that's very well aligned from top to bottom. So if you're still, carrying too much of your sales or your onboarding on your own shoulders, or maybe you're constantly just getting things over the line, maybe this episode is worth another listen. Plenty to take away and plenty to put into play there for you. That is it for this episode of Harvest. If you found this useful, all the links we mentioned are in the show notes. And of course, if you enjoyed it, please do leave us a review and share it with a friend, or even better, someone else in the industry who you know would get value from it. Until next time, happy harvesting.